The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward like a cathedral built for gods. Crystalline pillars twisted toward a dome that showed the swirling cosmos beyond, each star a world under the Council's rule. Representatives from 1,000 species filled the curved seating, their forms as varied as the worlds they came from. Some floated in atmospheric bubbles, others stood on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure energy contained in metallic shells. At the center of this vast space, a single human stood waiting. Adjusted his simple black suit and straightened his shoulders. Around him, the whispers began, not the respectful murmur that usually preceded formal addresses, but something else entirely. Laughter. Barely contained amusement rippled through the assembled delegates like a tide of mockery. "The human seeks an audience with the radiant monarchy," announced the council's speaker. The tall, crystalline being's voice rang with barely hidden contempt. "He claims to have formed a bond with one of their royal line." The laughter grew louder. Several species known for their telepathic abilities shared what were clearly jokes at its expense. The delegation, resembling giant mantises in ornate robes, clicked their mandibles in what passed for their version of laughter. Even the normally stoic, or beings of living stone, seemed to rumble with amusement. Had expected this. Humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and they were still considered the weakest member species. Earth's technology lagged centuries behind the council races. Their military consisted of ships that most species would classify as antiques. Their diplomatic influence ranked somewhere below species that had been extinct for. The idea that a human could attract the attention of the radiant monarchy was apparently so absurd that the entire council found it entertaining. Ambassador of the Hegemony Coalition rose from her seat. The serpentine woman's scales shifted through colors that indicated deep amusement and condescension. "Honored speaker, surely this jest has gone far enough. The radiant monarchy has not taken interest in primitive species for over 3,000 years. Their bloodline is the most pure, most ancient, most powerful in known space." "Indeed," agreed Counselor, a floating brain encased in a transparent dome. "The Radiant Ones are beings of such elevated consciousness that they barely acknowledge the existence of most council members. The notion that they would notice a human is beyond unlikely. It is impossible." Waited, he had learned patience during his years as Earth's cultural, a position most species considered to be a joke in itself. What could humans possibly contribute to galactic culture? They had no psychic abilities, no natural weapons, no extended, no exotic technologies. They were, by every metric the galaxy used, completely ordinary. "Perhaps," Speaker continued, his crystal body refracting light in patterns that suggested cruel amusement, "the human would like to present his evidence. We could all use some entertainment before we move on to serious matters." The chamber erupted in laughter again. Could see delegates pointing at him, their various forms of communication buzzing with jokes he couldn't understand but whose meaning was clear enough. Some were even recording the moment, probably to share with their home worlds as an example of human delusion. "I would be honored to present my case," said simply. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustic design, and the laughter died down to curious murmurs. Most expected him to back down, to claim it was all a misunderstanding. Instead, he reached into his jacket and a small crystalline device. The device was no larger than his palm, but it immediately drew attention. It pulsed with soft light that seemed to contain tiny stars, and the crystal itself appeared to be carved from compressed starlight. Every species in the chamber recognized what they were looking at, even if they couldn't quite believe it. A radiant communication crystal, one of the rarest objects in the known galaxy. The laughter stopped entirely. "Impossible," breathed Ambassador. "Those crystals are never given to outsiders. The radiant monarchy guards them more closely than their own lives." "The human must have stolen it," declared Counselor. "Or perhaps he found it on some abandoned world. There are stories of ancient battlefields where such artifacts might be discovered." Smiled slightly. "Would the Council like me to activate it?" Speaker's crystalline form shifted through several colors before settling on a deep blue that indicated confusion and wariness. The Council had never seen a human in possession of such an artifact. The implications were staggering if it was genuine, but the idea that it could be genuine was so foreign to their worldview that they couldn't process it. "Activate it," Speaker commanded. "Let us see what trickery this is." Pressed his thumb to the crystal's surface. Immediately, the device blazed with light so brilliant that several species had to shield their sensory organs. The light formed a column that stretched toward the chamber's dome, and within that column, an image began to form. She was beautiful in a way that transcended species barriers. Her skin seemed to be made of captured moonlight, shifting between silver and pale gold. Her hair flowed like liquid starlight, and her eyes held the depth of space itself. She wore robes that appeared to be woven from aurora, and when she moved, reality itself seemed to bend slightly around her. Every being in the chamber recognized her instantly. Princess, third daughter of the Radiant Emperor, heir to powers that could reshape worlds with a thought. My beloved, her voice rang through the chamber like music made of light itself. I hope your people are treating you with the respect you deserve. I know they find our bond difficult to understand, but they will learn in time. The projection paused, and could see Princess's expression shift to something more serious. I have spoken with Father about formalizing our union. He wishes to meet you properly, as do my sisters. The Radiant Court has been buzzing with curiosity about the human who captured my heart through nothing but kindness and genuine care. You are unlike anyone I have ever encountered. Your species' capacity for love without seeking power in return is something we had thought lost in the galaxy. The projection smiled again, and the light in her eyes seemed to reach through the crystal to touch directly. I count the moments until we are together again. Give my regards to your council, and remind them that judging others by their technology rather than their hearts is why they will always be lesser beings. The projection faded, leaving the chamber in absolute silence. Calmly returned the crystal to his jacket and looked around the chamber. Every single delegate was staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to dawning terror. They had just insulted the prospective mate of a radiant princess. The political implications were staggering. The Radiant Monarchy didn't just rule their own systems. They were the ancient power behind the scenes, the beings whose word could reshape the galactic order. They had destroyed entire species for lesser insults than what had just occurred in this chamber. Speaker's crystalline body was cycling through colors so rapidly it was almost painful to watch. This cannot be possible. Humans are barely civilized. They have no psychic abilities, no natural advantages, no significant power base. How could one of the Radiant bloodline possibly? Choose to love me, finished quietly. Perhaps because we judge people by who they are, not what they can do for us. Ambassador had gone completely pale, her scales now a sickly gray color. Do you understand what you've done? The entire council just laughed at a member of the Radiant Imperial family. They could destroy us all for this insult. That's not really my problem, replied. I came here to request passage to the Radiant Courts to meet Princess' family formally. Instead, I've been mocked and insulted for the past hour. I think Princess' assessment of this council was quite accurate. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates began shouting in dozens of languages, some demanding explanations, others calling for immediate apologies to be sent to the Radiant Monarchy. A few were already trying to leave, apparently deciding that being in the same room as was too dangerous. Speaker managed to restore some order by increasing his luminosity to painful levels. Human, the Council. The Council may have been hasty in its initial response. Perhaps we could discuss more appropriate arrangements for your travel to the Radiant Courts. Perhaps, agreed, though I think we need to address a few things first. He gestured to the chaos around them. For 50 years, humanity has been treated as a joke by this council. Our representatives have been ignored, our proposals dismissed without consideration, our attempts at meaningful contribution laughed at. You've assumed that because we don't have psychic powers or exotic technology, we have nothing valuable to offer. The chamber was growing quiet again, as delegates realized where this was heading. But here I stand, holding a communication crystal from the most powerful royal family in known space. A family that your most advanced species consider to be myths. A family that, according to the princess herself, finds this council to be lacking in the qualities that truly matter. Look directly at Speaker. So before we discuss my travel arrangements, I think we need to discuss how humanity will be treated going forward. Because I suspect that Princess is not going to be very happy if she learns that her future husband's people continue to be dismissed and marginalized. The silence stretched for a long moment before Counselor spoke up, his voice carefully neutral. What exactly are you proposing, human? equal representation on all council committees, equal consideration for human proposals and initiatives, and an end to the casual dismissal of human contributions to galactic society. Paused. Oh, and a formal apology from every delegate who participated in today's mockery. The demands sent another wave of agitation through the chamber. Several delegates started to protest, but Speaker raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "And if the council refuses these demands?" the Speaker asked. Shrugged, "Then I'll be sure to mention to Princess how her future in-laws were treated by the galactic government she's expected to work with. I'm sure she and her father will find that information very interesting." The threat was clear. The Radiant Monarchy had the power to dissolve the Galactic Council entirely if they chose to. They could redistribute territory, reassign trade routes, or simply decide that certain species no longer deserved to exist. It had happened before, though not in living memory. Ambassador was the first to break. "The Hegemony Coalition formally apologizes for any disrespect shown to the human representative," she announced, her voice strained. "We look forward to working with humanity in a spirit of equality and mutual respect." One by one, other delegates began offering similar apologies. Some sounded more sincere than others, but wasn't particularly concerned with sincerity. He was concerned with results. Speaker waited until the last apology was offered before speaking again. "The Council recognizes that humanity deserves full equality within our governing structure. We will begin implementing the requested changes immediately." He paused. "As for your travel to the Radiant Courts, the Council's fastest diplomatic vessel will be placed at your disposal." "That's very generous," said, "but I think I'll make my own arrangements. Princess mentioned that her family is sending a proper escort." As if summoned by his words, the chamber's main viewing screen activated. The image it showed made every delegate in the room freeze in terror. A ship was approaching the station, but calling it a ship was like calling a star a candle. The vessel stretched for kilometers, its hull appearing to be made of crystallized light itself. It moved without any visible propulsion, reality bending around it like space itself was eager to accommodate its passage. It was a radiant dreadnought, one of perhaps a dozen ships in the entire galaxy capable of destroying solar systems. And it was here for. Said, checking his watch. "They're right on time." The communications system activated without anyone touching it, and a voice like crystallized music filled the chamber. "Galactic Council Station, this is the radiant vessel Starlight's Edge. We are here to collect the honored for transport to the Imperial Courts. Please have him ready for transfer within the hour." Speaker's colors were now cycling so rapidly he was essentially a prism of panic. Of course, honored, your escort has arrived." "So it has," straightened his suit one final time. "I trust that when I return, humanity will find a much more welcoming atmosphere in this chamber." "Absolutely," several delegates said at once. As walked toward the chamber's exit, he could hear the frantic discussions beginning behind him. The council would spend the next several hours trying to figure out how they had so completely misread the situation. They would analyze every interaction between humans and other species, looking for clues they had missed. They would wonder if other humans had similar connections to powerful entities they were unaware of. But knew the truth was much simpler than they would ever believe. He had met Princess during a routine cultural exchange, where she had been traveling incognito to study different species. While other delegates had tried to impress her with displays of power or offers of political alliance, had simply treated her like a person. He had listened to her thoughts on art and philosophy, shared stories about human culture, and asked her opinion on things without any hidden agenda. It had never occurred to him to be anything other than himself. Apparently, that was exactly what she had been looking for. The docking bay was a flurry of activity as station personnel scrambled to accommodate the arrival of a radiant vessel. Most of them had never seen anything beyond council ships, and the sight of the crystalline transport craft that emerged from the dreadnought left them speechless. Two figures emerged from the transport. They were clearly of the same species as Princess, though not quite as radiant. Still, their presence made the air itself seem to shimmer with potential energy. One of them asked, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. "That's me. I am Captain, Commander of the Starlight's Edge. Her Imperial Highness has asked me to ensure your comfortable transport to the Radiant Courts." The captain looked around at the starring station personnel. "Are you ready to depart?" Absolutely, replied. I think I've spent enough time here for one day. As they walked toward the transport craft, Captain spoke quietly. The princess mentioned that your people were treated with some discourtesy during your time here. Nothing I couldn't handle, assured him. Still, such behavior toward the future imperial consort is unacceptable. The emperor has asked me to ensure that this matter is properly addressed. Glanced back at the station. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the council chamber where delegates were still arguing frantically among themselves. I think they're beginning to understand their mistake, he said. Perhaps, but understanding and proper respect are different things. Captain smiled, and the expression was somehow both warm and terrifying. The Radiant Monarchy has a long memory for those who show kindness to our family. We also remember those who show disrespect. As the transport craft sealed and began moving toward the dreadnought, took one last look at the council station. He suspected that when he returned, humanity would find itself in a very different position within the galactic community. The transport docked smoothly within the dreadnought's bay and found himself aboard a vessel that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. The corridors were lined with what appeared to be windows, but instead of showing the star-filled void of space, they displayed swirling galaxies, distant nebulae, and cosmic phenomena that shouldn't have been visible from their current location. The ship moves through folded space, Captain explained, noticing curiosity. We are simultaneously here and everywhere else. It allows for instantaneous travel across any distance. Impressive, said, though he was beginning to understand that impressive didn't begin to cover the capabilities of the Radiant Monarchy. No wonder the Council had reacted with such fear. Humanity had somehow gained the attention of beings who treated the laws of physics as suggestions. The princess is waiting for you in the forward observation deck, Captain continued. She has been quite excited about your arrival. As they walked through corridors that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight, reflected on how dramatically his life had changed in the past few months. 6 months ago, he had been a minor cultural whose primary job was translating human customs for species that rarely paid attention anyway. Now he was aboard the most powerful ship in the galaxy, on his way to meet the Emperor of the Radiant Monarchy as the prospective mate of an imperial princess. The observation deck doors opened silently and stepped into a space that took his breath away. The room stretched out like a vast garden, filled with plants that seemed to be made of living light. Stars wheeled overhead in patterns that suggested they were no longer in normal space at all. And in the center of it all, Princess was waiting. She turned as he entered, and her smile was like sunrise on a world made of precious gems. You're finally here. Wouldn't miss it for anything, he replied, moving to embrace her. As they held each other, could feel the power that flowed through her like a gentle current of lightning. But beneath that cosmic energy, she was simply the woman he had fallen in love with during long conversations about art, philosophy, and the nature of existence. How did the council meeting go? She asked, though her tone suggested she already had some idea. About as well as you predicted, admitted. They found the idea of us together rather amusing. And now I think they're reconsidering their assumptions about humanity. Princess laughed, and the sound was like wind chimes made of crystal and starlight. Good. It's time they learned that true power doesn't come from technology or psychic abilities. It comes from the strength to be kind when kindness is difficult, to show love without expecting anything in return, and to treat others as equals regardless of their perceived status. She gestured to the stars wheeling around them. My people have shaped galaxies and created wonders beyond imagination. But until I met you, I had never encountered someone who saw me simply as myself, not as an opportunity or a prize to be won. Looked out at the cosmic dance surrounding them. So what happens now? Now you meet my family. Father is curious about the human who managed to accomplish what thousands of other suitors could not. She smiled. And then, if you're willing, we begin planning our future together. I'm willing, said without hesitation. Even knowing that being part of the Radiant family will change everything. Your life, your world, your entire species' place in the galaxy. Considered this. Humanity had spent 50 years as the junior partner in galactic civilization, struggling to prove their worth to species that barely acknowledged their existence. Now, seemingly overnight, they would become the branch of the most powerful family in known space. Change isn't always bad, he said finally. And I think humanity is ready for a different relationship with the galaxy. Princess's eyes sparkled with affection and approval. Then let's go meet the Emperor. I think he's going to be quite pleased with my choice. As the radiant dreadnought continued its journey through folded space toward the Imperial courts, thought about the council delegates back at the station. They were probably still trying to understand how their understanding of galactic politics had been so completely overturned in the span of a single afternoon. But understood something they didn't. Power without compassion was ultimately empty, and all the technology in the galaxy couldn't create the kind of connection that grew between two people who genuinely cared for each other. The radiant monarchy had ruled for not just because of their abilities, but because they remembered what truly mattered. And apparently they had found in humanity a species that shared those values. As the ship began to approach its destination, could see lights in the distance that suggested structures on a scale that dwarfed anything the council had ever built. The radiant courts were approaching, and with them, a new chapter in both his life and humanity's future among the stars. The radiant court's every attempt made to comprehend their scale. What he had initially mistaken for a large space station revealed itself to be something far grander as the starlight's edge approached. Crystalline spires stretched across impossible distances, connected by bridges of pure light that spanned what seemed like entire star systems. Gardens floated in space without any visible containment, their alien flowers blooming in patterns that created music when viewed from the correct angle. "My home," Princess said softly, standing beside him at the observation deck's main window. "I know it must seem overwhelming." "It's beautiful," replied honestly. "But I'm starting to understand why the council was so shocked. This isn't just advanced technology. This is something beyond anything they could imagine. The courts exist partially outside normal space-time," she explained. "My ancestors built them when they ascended to their current form ago. They serve as both our home and a symbol of what's possible when a species reaches true harmony with the cosmic forces." As they docked at one of the smaller landing platforms, noticed that even the docking procedure was unlike anything in his experience. Instead of mechanical arms and airlocks, tendrils of crystallized energy gently guided the ship into position, while the platform itself seemed to grow a perfect seal around their vessel's hull. "Your technology is integrated with your biology," observed. "Technology, biology, consciousness, and cosmic force," confirmed. "We stopped seeing them as separate things long ago. When you understand that everything is connected, the boundaries between self and environment become meaningless." Captain joined them as they prepared to disembark. "Her Imperial Highness, the Emperor has requested an informal audience before the formal introductions begin. He wishes to speak with alone." Felt a flutter of nervousness. Meeting the father of the woman you love was challenging enough under normal circumstances. When that father happened to be one of the most powerful beings in the known galaxy, the stakes became somewhat higher. "Don't worry," said, squeezing his hand. "Father is curious about you, not suspicious. He's never seen me as happy as I've been these past months." "What should I expect?" "Honesty," she replied simply. "He values authenticity above all else. Just be yourself. That's what drew me to you, and it's what will impress him." The corridors of the Radiant Courts were unlike anything aboard the ship. Here, the walls themselves seemed to be alive, shifting between transparency and opacity as needed, sometimes showing the cosmic vista beyond, and sometimes displaying what appeared to be memories or dreams made visible. Beings of various forms moved through the halls, though all shared the distinctive radiance that marked them as members of the royal family. "So many people," commented. "The court includes extended family, advisors, scholars, and artisans," explained. "We believe in surrounding ourselves with those who challenge us to grow. Isolation breeds stagnation, even for immortal beings." They passed through what appeared to be a library, though the books were composed of crystallized light, and the information they contained seemed to flow directly into the minds of those who approached them. Beyond that was a gallery where artists were creating sculptures from what looked like captured aurora, their hands shaping the cosmic phenomena like clay. "Everyone is starring," noticed. Word travels quickly in the courts. The human who captured's heart has become quite the topic of conversation. Captain smiled. "Don't let their curiosity concern you. They're simply fascinated by the idea that love has once again proven stronger than politics." "What do you mean, once again?" The radiant bloodline has a history of unexpected romantic choices, said with amusement. My great-aunt caused quite a stir when she fell in love with a being of pure energy from the Andromeda galaxy. My cousin shocked everyone by choosing a mate from a species that existed only in 3 dimensions. Love, we've learned, recognizes no boundaries. They arrived at a set of doors that seemed to be made of crystallized time itself. Could see layers of past and future events flickering within the transparent surface, creating a disorienting effect that made his eyes water. The Emperor's private study, Captain announced. You are expected. Princess, His Imperial Majesty has requested that this first meeting be private. I'll be waiting right here, promised, giving an encouraging smile. The doors opened without any visible mechanism, and stepped into a room that somehow managed to be both intimate and infinite. The space curved away from him in directions that shouldn't have been possible, yet everything felt perfectly natural and welcoming. Books lined shelves that extended far beyond what the room's exterior dimensions should have allowed, and comfortable seating was arranged around a fireplace that burned with flames of pure starlight. Welcome. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, warm and resonant with power that made the air itself hum with potential. A figure materialized near the fireplace and found himself face to face with Emperor of the Radiant Monarchy. The Emperor was tall, even by the standards of his species, but he had chosen to appear in a relatively simple form. His skin held the same starlight quality as his daughter's, though his seemed to contain entire galaxies rather than individual stars. His hair was silver shot through with veins of pure light, and his eyes held the depth of cosmic voids that had witnessed the birth and death of civilizations. Your Imperial Majesty, said, offering what he hoped was an appropriate bow. Please sit, we're family now or near enough, call me. The Emperor gestured to a chair that materialized from nothing. Can I offer you anything? Wine from grapes grown in the light of dying stars? Tea made from leaves that exist only in 7 dimensions? I'm fine, thank you, replied, settling into the chair. The furniture seemed to adjust itself to his exact physiology, providing perfect comfort without him having to move. Wise, our beverages can be overwhelming for those not accustomed to consuming concepts along with flavors. Took a seat across from him, and for a moment, he simply studied with those cosmic eyes. You're wondering why my daughter chose you, the Emperor said finally. The thought had occurred to me, admitted. As it should, has had suitors from every major species in this galaxy and several others. Beings of immense power, ancient wisdom, and cosmic significance have sought her hand. She has refused them all, leaned forward slightly. Then she meets a human cultural, and within months she's speaking of love and matrimony. Felt the weight of the Emperor's attention like a physical force. This was clearly some kind of test, though he wasn't sure what the right answer might be. I don't have power or wisdom or cosmic significance, said honestly. I can't reshape reality or command star fleets or manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. I'm just a person who fell in love with your daughter. Just a person, repeated thoughtfully. And why do you think that matters to her? Considered the question carefully. Because she spent her entire life surrounded by beings who wanted something from her. Her power, her position, her influence. I think she was tired of being seen as a prize instead of a person. And you see her as a person. I see her as brilliant, kind, curious, sometimes stubborn, always challenging me to think about things differently. Smiled slightly. The fact that she can rearrange solar systems with her thoughts is impressive, but it's not why I love her. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, and could feel power shifting around him like invisible currents. Finally, smiled, and the expression transformed his cosmic features into something warmly paternal. There it is, he said with satisfaction, the quality that my daughter has been seeking her entire life. Which is the ability to love without agenda, to care for someone simply because of who they are, not what they can provide. The Emperor stood and moved to the fireplace, staring into the starlight flames. Do you know what curse comes with ultimate power? No, sir. Everyone wants something from you. Every conversation, every relationship, every gesture of friendship comes with hidden motives. You begin to question whether anyone truly cares for you or whether they simply care about what you can do for them. Began to understand. Has never had a relationship where power wasn't part of the equation. Precisely, until she met you. A human from a species so technologically primitive that you couldn't possibly hope to gain anything significant from an alliance with her. Turned back to face him. When you showed interest in her thoughts on art and philosophy, when you shared stories of human culture, when you treated her simply as an interesting person to get to know, she experienced something she had never encountered before. Authentic connection. Yes, and once she had tasted that, she could never settle for anything less. The Emperor moved to one of his, and what appeared to be a crystal containing swirling galaxies. This contains the complete history of our family's romantic relationships over the past 5,000 years. Every union, every courtship, every political marriage. Would you like to know what they all had in common? Suspected he wouldn't like the answer, but he nodded anyway. Power seeking power, ancient bloodlines strengthening ancient bloodlines, cosmic entities joining forces to reshape reality according to their combined will. Held up the crystal and could see the swirling forms of countless beings within it. All very impressive, all completely sterile. The Emperor set the crystal aside and looked directly at. My daughter is the first member of our family in to choose love over advantage. For that alone, she has my blessing. Felt a weight he hadn't realized he'd been carrying lift from his shoulders. Thank you, Your Majesty. That means more than I can express. The Emperor corrected gently. And we're not finished yet. Accepting you as my daughter's choice is one thing. Understanding what that choice means for your species is another matter entirely. The room shifted around them, and suddenly they were standing in what appeared to be a vast observatory. Star maps filled the air, showing the current political structure of the galaxy in three-dimensional detail. Could see the territories controlled by various species, trade routes, military installations, and spheres of influence. Your people occupy a single star system, observed, gesturing to a tiny point of light in one corner of the map. 50 worlds under council jurisdiction have larger populations. From any objective standpoint, humanity is insignificant in galactic politics. I'm aware of that, said quietly. But when you marry, that changes. Humanity becomes part of the radiant bloodline. Your species gains access to technologies and knowledge that could advance your civilization by overnight. Your political influence increases beyond measure. The Emperor touched one of the star maps, and Earth's system suddenly blazed with golden light. Are your people prepared for that kind of transformation? It was a question had been avoiding thinking about. The implications were staggering. Humanity would go from being the weakest member of the galactic community to being connected to its most powerful family. The changes would be dramatic, sudden, and irreversible. I don't know, answered honestly. We're a young species by galactic standards. We're still learning how to work together as a planet, let alone as part of an interstellar civilization. This kind of rapid advancement, it could be wonderful or it could destroy us. A thoughtful answer. Many would have simply assured me that their people could handle anything. Manipulated the star map and could see projections of possible futures spreading out like branches on a cosmic tree. What do you think humanity's greatest strength is? Adaptability, replied without hesitation. We're not the strongest or the most technologically advanced, but we learn quickly and we don't give up. When we're faced with challenges that seem impossible, we find ways to overcome them. And your greatest weakness? Thought about Earth's history of wars, environmental destruction, and social inequality. We have trouble thinking beyond immediate self-interest. We're getting better at working together, but we still struggle with putting the good of the many ahead of the wants of the few. Both of those qualities will be tested in the coming years, the Emperor said seriously. Alliance with the Radiant Monarchy will bring your species to the attention of forces that are far more dangerous than anything they've encountered so far. The star map shifted to show regions of space that didn't recognize. Dark areas where stars seemed to be missing, and strange geometries that hurt to look at directly. There are entities in this galaxy that view the Radiant Monarchy as a threat to their own ambitions. Ancient beings that have slept for eons and are beginning to stir. Cosmic forces that seek to remake reality according to their own twisted visions. The expression grew grim. By accepting as your mate, you're not just gaining an ally, you're inheriting enemies that could destroy your entire species without effort. Felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. Are you trying to discourage me from marrying your daughter? I'm trying to ensure that you understand the full scope of what you're choosing. Love is wonderful, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum. Your personal happiness will have consequences that stretch across the galaxy. The room shifted again, returning to its original comfortable configuration. Found himself back in the chair by the starlight fireplace, though his mind was still reeling from what he had seen. "What would you recommend?" he asked. "That depends on your answer to one question. Do you love my daughter enough to help her bear the burden of protecting an entire species that isn't ready for the enemies they're about to face?" Thought about Earth, about humanity's struggles and potential, about the people he had grown up with and the world he called home. Then he thought about her brilliant mind and generous heart, about the future they could build together. "Yes," he said simply, "even knowing that you may have to make choices that your own people won't understand. Even knowing that you may have to prioritize galactic stability over human preferences. If it means protecting the people I care about, yes." Smiled again, and this time the expression was filled with pride and approval. "Then you truly are worthy of my daughter, and humanity is fortunate to have you as their representative in the cosmic order that's coming." The Emperor stood and extended his hand. When shook it, he felt a brief surge of power that left his vision filled with stars and his mind touched by infinite possibilities. "Welcome to the family. May your love prove as enduring as the cosmos themselves." The doors to the study opened and entered with barely contained excitement. "How did it go?" "Your father has given us his blessing," replied, still feeling slightly overwhelmed by everything he had learned. "I told you he would like you." She moved to embrace him, then looked questioningly at her father. "Though you look like you've been discussing more than just our engagement." "Your future husband needed to understand what he was accepting," replied. "The responsibilities that come with joining our bloodline are not to be taken lightly." And asked, though her tone suggested she wasn't worried about his answer. "And he has proven himself worthy of both your love and the trust our family is placing in his species." The Emperor gestured toward the door. "Now come. The rest of the family is eager to meet the human who has captured our dear's heart." As they left the study, reflected on how completely his understanding of the situation had changed. What had begun as a simple matter of two people falling in love had revealed itself to be something far more complex. He wasn't just marrying. He was accepting responsibility for humanity's future role in cosmic events that were beyond anything his species had ever imagined. But as he looked at its radiant smile and felt the warmth of her hand in his, he knew he had made the right choice. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The main audience hall of the Radiant Courts was vast enough to hold entire cities. Beings of incredible power and beauty filled the space, their conversations creating a symphony of music that seemed to resonate with the fundamental harmonies of the universe. All conversations stopped as led into the chamber. "Family," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space, "I present of Earth my chosen mate and your future kinsman." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Beings that could reshape reality with their thoughts rose to offer congratulations. Ancient entities that had witnessed the birth of civilizations expressed their approval. Powers that existed beyond normal dimensions manifested just long enough to give their blessings. And at the center of it all stood Holding's hand, understanding finally that he had become part of something infinitely larger than himself. The human who had been mocked by the Galactic Council was now connected to forces that could rewrite the fundamental laws of existence. But more importantly, he was exactly where he belonged. With the woman he loved, surrounded by a family that had accepted him not for what he could offer them, but for what he had already given their daughter. "Are you ready for this?" whispered as they moved through the crowd of cosmic beings offering their congratulations. Squeezed her hand and smiled. "With you, I'm ready for anything." The first phase of his new life was complete. Now came the real challenge, learning how to be both the man loved and the representative of a species that was about to be thrust onto the cosmic stage, whether they were ready or not. As the celebration continued around them, began to plan for a future that would reshape not just his own destiny, but the destiny of every human being alive. 3 months had passed since formal acceptance into the Radiant family, and the galaxy was still adjusting to the implications. The wedding ceremony itself had been broadcast across every inhabited system, watched by trillions of beings who struggled to understand how a species they had barely noticed had suddenly become cosmically significant. Stood in the observation deck of the newly commissioned diplomatic vessel Harmony's light, watching Earth grow larger in the It was his first return home since the wedding, and he wasn't sure what to expect. Stood beside him, her presence still causing subtle distortions in local space-time that made their radiant escort ships flicker in and out of normal reality. Nervous, she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Terrified, admitted. The last messages from Earth suggested that humanity is having some difficulty adjusting to their new status in the galaxy. That was an understatement. The communications had received painted a picture of a world in chaos. The revelation that one of their minor diplomats had married into cosmic royalty had triggered everything from religious revivals to political upheavals. Some humans were calling it humanity's greatest triumph, while others viewed it as the end of their species' independence. Change is always difficult, said gently, but your people are more resilient than they realize. The Harmony's light was itself a symbol of that change. While it appeared to be a standard diplomatic vessel from the outside, it incorporated radiant technology that made it more powerful than most species' entire fleets. It could travel instantly between star systems, defend itself against virtually any threat, and serve as a mobile embassy for conducting business across the galaxy. Incoming transmission from Earth Command, announced the ship's AI, which possessed a level of consciousness that most humans would find deeply unsettling. The shifted to show a familiar face. Admiral Sarah, sister, looked exhausted but determined as she addressed them from her office in Geneva. Thank God you're finally coming home. We need to talk, and I mean immediately. Hello to you too, Sarah, replied with amusement. How are things on Earth? Complicated doesn't begin to cover it. We've had 17 different governments request formal audiences with you. The UN Security Council has been in emergency session for 3 weeks. And don't even get me started on the religious implications everyone's trying to work out. Religious implications. Sarah rubbed her temples. Half the planet thinks you've proved that humanity is cosmically special. The other half thinks we've been adopted as pets by beings so advanced we can't comprehend them. There's been everything from celebration parades to protest riots. And the government's position. Officially, we're honored by the alliance and committed to using our new relationships responsibly. Sarah's expression grew more serious. Unofficially, we're scared out of our minds. Do you have any idea what's been happening since your wedding was broadcast? Exchanged a look with. They had expected some reaction, but the scale suggested by Sarah's tone was concerning. Tell me. Every major species in the galaxy has been trying to establish closer relationships with Earth. Trade offers, technology exchanges, cultural programs, military alliances. We've gone from having maybe a dozen diplomatic contacts to having over 3,000 active negotiations. That sounds like a good thing. It would be if we had any idea how to handle it. We're not ready for this. 6 months ago, our biggest galactic concern was getting approval for new trade routes. Now we're being asked to mediate disputes between species that have been fighting for centuries, simply because they assume we have influence with the radiant monarchy. The shifted to show a tactical display of the Sol system, was shocked to see the number of ships present. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of different species filled the space around Earth, all apparently waiting for audiences with human representatives. It's like this around every human colony, Sarah continued. We've become the most popular species in the galaxy overnight, and we don't have the infrastructure to handle it. What do you need from me? Asked. Help, guidance, some way to manage this without causing a diplomatic crisis that drags us into conflicts we don't understand. Sarah paused. And honestly, reassurance that we're not going to lose ourselves in the process. What do you mean? I mean that some of our people are starting to act like we're inherently superior to other species because of your marriage. Like we've been chosen by cosmic destiny or something. That kind of thinking scares me. That's how species start making the kinds of mistakes that lead to wars. Felt a familiar weight settle in his stomach. Emperor had warned him about this possibility. Power without wisdom was dangerous, and humanity was suddenly discovering they had access to more power than they knew how to use. We'll be there in 6 hours, he told his sister. Try to keep things stable until then. I'll do my best, but you might want to prepare yourself for how much things have changed down here. The transmission ended, leaving and alone with the growing image of Earth. From space, the planet looked much as it always had, but could see the signs of change if he knew where to look. New orbital installations that incorporated radiant technology, expanded docking facilities to handle the influx of alien visitors, and energy signatures that suggested significant upgrades to Earth's defensive systems. "Your sister is right to be concerned," said thoughtfully. "Sudden elevation in status has destroyed more civilizations than external conquest. What do you recommend?" "That we help your people understand the difference between having power and having earned it." She gestured to the tactical display showing all the ships around Earth. "Right now, everyone wants to be humanity's friend because they hope to gain favor with my family through you. But that kind of friendship is built on sand. So how do we build something more solid? By proving that humanity deserves respect for their own qualities, not just their connections." His expression grew thoughtful. "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." "I'm listening." "We make humanity work for their new status. We help them develop their own capabilities instead of simply handing them radiant technology. We ensure that when other species respect humanity, it's because of what humans have accomplished, not because they're afraid of offending my father." Could see the wisdom in her suggestion, but he also understood why he wouldn't like it. "That's going to take time. Years, maybe decades. And in the meantime, humanity will be vulnerable to all those cosmic threats your father warned me about. Which is why we'll provide protection while they grow into their new role. But the protection has to be temporary, or humanity will never develop the strength to stand on their own." The Harmony's light entered Earth's atmosphere with none of the dramatic effects that usually accompanied radiant vessels. Had specifically requested that they arrive as quietly as possible, hopping to avoid the kind of spectacle that would further complicate an already difficult situation. Their landing at Geneva Spaceport was met by a carefully controlled reception. Sarah had managed to keep the crowd manageable, but could see the security measures that had been necessary. Military personnel formed multiple perimeters around the landing area, and he could detect the energy signatures of defensive systems that definitely hadn't been there before his departure. "Welcome home," Sarah said as they disembarked. Her greeting, too, was more formal but genuinely warm. "Your Imperial Highness, thank you for coming to Earth." "Please call me, we're family now." The princess looked around at the security arrangements with interest. "These precautions seem extensive." "We've had several attempts at infiltration by groups wanting to get close to," Sarah explained as they walked toward a waiting transport. "Nothing dangerous, mostly just people who think proximity to him will somehow give them cosmic significance." "But some more dangerous than others?" asked. "A few. There are groups that see your marriage as either humanity's salvation or its damnation. The extreme ends of both spectrums have been causing problems." The transport took them through Geneva, and was struck by how much the city had changed in just a few months. New buildings incorporating alien architectural styles, markets selling goods from across the galaxy, and crowds that included multiple non-human species walking alongside humans, as if such things were perfectly normal. "Adaptation," he murmured. "Faster than anyone expected," Sarah agreed. "Humans, it turns out, are remarkably quick to accept new normal circumstances. The problem is that our institutions weren't designed to handle this pace of change." The UN headquarters had been expanded significantly, with new wings built using construction techniques that had clearly been shared by various alien species. The main assembly hall was now large enough to accommodate representatives from hundreds of different worlds, and could see evidence of translation systems that went far beyond anything humanity had possessed before his departure. "The emergency session is already in progress," Sarah explained as they entered the building. "Every permanent Security Council member is there, plus representatives from the major human colonies and about 50 alien delegations." 50. "Everyone wants to be present for your first official statement since the wedding. What you say today is going to set the tone for humanity's relationships with the galaxy for years to come." "No pressure, thought." The assembly hall fell silent as and entered. He could see familiar faces from Earth's leadership mixed with beings from across the galaxy, all watching him with expressions that ranged from hopeful to anxious to calculating. "Ladies and honored representatives," began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustics. "I understand there have been some concerns about humanity's new position in galactic affairs." A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. Let me be clear about something from the start. My marriage to Princess does not make humanity automatically important. It doesn't grant us special privileges or exemptions from the challenges that face all developing civilizations. What it does give us is an opportunity. He gestured to include the alien delegates in his words. An opportunity to prove that Earth's greatest export isn't our technology or our resources. It's our perspective, our ability to find common ground between different viewpoints, to adapt to new circumstances, and to treat others with respect regardless of their origins. Could see some of the human delegates shifting uncomfortably. This wasn't the triumphant declaration of human superiority that some had been hopping for. Over the past 3 months, I've learned that the galaxy is facing challenges that threaten all civilized life. Ancient entities stirring from eons of slumber, cosmic forces that view existing reality as an obstacle to their ambitions, and political tensions between species that could tear apart the fabric of interstellar civilization. The mood in the hall grew more serious as delegates absorbed the implications of his words. Humanity has been offered a chance to help address these challenges, not because we're inherently superior to anyone else, but because we bring a fresh perspective to problems that have existed for. Our youth as a spacefaring species isn't a weakness, it's our strength. Paused and looked around the assembly. But only if we approach this opportunity with wisdom and humility. If we assume that our new connections make us automatically powerful, we'll repeat the same mistakes that have plagued galactic politics for thousands of years. What exactly are you proposing? Asked Secretary General Martinez. That we earn our place in the cosmic order, that we accept help from our allies while working to develop our own capabilities, that we use our influence to bridge gaps between species rather than advancing purely human interests. Could see mixed reactions among the human delegates. Some looked inspired by his vision, while others appeared concerned about what his approach might mean for Earth's immediate advantages. I propose the creation of a new organization, the Galactic Harmony Initiative, a joint effort between humanity and our allies to address the common threats facing all civilized life in this galaxy. We'll contribute our perspective and our growing capabilities, while our partners contribute their knowledge and experience. And the Radiant Monarchy's position on this proposal? Asked Ambassador, one of Earth's senior diplomats. Rose gracefully. The Imperial Court supports any initiative that promotes cooperation and mutual understanding among the galaxy's peoples. We will provide guidance and protection as needed, but the success of this endeavor must ultimately depend on the participants themselves. Over the following hours, the details were hammered out. The Galactic Harmony Initiative would be headquartered on Earth, but include facilities throughout human space and on various allied worlds. It would focus on conflict resolution, technological development for mutual benefit, and preparation for the cosmic threats that Emperor had warned about. Most importantly, it would operate on principles of equality and earned respect rather than inherited privilege. The first test of the new organization came sooner than anyone expected. 3 weeks after the Geneva Accords established the Galactic Harmony Initiative, long-range sensors detected something approaching the galaxy from the void between star clusters. Stood in the newly constructed command center on Luna, watching as data flowed in from observation posts scattered across dozens of star systems. The object was massive, easily the size of a small moon, and it was moving under its own power despite showing no recognizable signs of technological construction. It's organic, reported Dr. Elizabeth, the initiative's chief science officer. But unlike anything in our databases, the energy readings suggest intelligence, but on a scale we've never encountered. How long until it reaches inhabited space? Asked. At current velocity, approximately 6 months, but its course will take it directly through 3 major shipping lanes and past 2 populated systems. Studied the sensor readings with the enhanced perception available to her species. This is one of the entities my father warned about, a drifter, a cosmic consciousness that views inhabited space as territory to be claimed. Hostile, not necessarily malicious, but utterly indifferent to the existence of lesser life forms. If it decides to establish a territory in this region, it will simply reshape local space to suit its needs. The fact that doing so would destroy entire civilizations wouldn't occur to it as a concern. So how do we deal with it? Traditional approaches have been unsuccessful. Military action is pointless against a being that exists partially outside normal space. Diplomatic contact has proven impossible because it doesn't recognize other forms of consciousness as worthy of communication. Looked around the command center at the representatives from 24 species working side by side to analyze the threat. What if we tried a different approach? Such as, what if instead of trying to fight it or negotiate with it, we made it curious about us? The plan that developed over the following weeks was unlike anything that had been attempted in galactic history. Instead of preparing for conflict or evacuation, the Galactic Harmony Initiative began constructing what could only be described as the largest collaborative art project ever undertaken. Ships and stations throughout the galaxy began creating synchronized displays of light, energy, and matter manipulation that told the story of civilization in their region. Each species contributed elements that represented their culture, their history, and their dreams for the future. The displays were timed to create a cascading wave of expression that would reach the approaching entity long before it arrived at any inhabited worlds. "You're trying to make it see us as interesting rather than irrelevant," realized as she watched the first test sequence. "Exactly. From what you've told me, these cosmic entities don't destroy civilizations out of malice. They just don't notice them. So we're going to make ourselves impossible to ignore." The project required unprecedented cooperation between species that had been enemies for centuries. The Hegemony Coalition worked alongside the Dominion to create gravitational art that painted patterns across star systems. The swarms coordinated their movements to generate music that could be heard across light years. Even species that existed primarily as energy beings contributed by creating aurora displays that told visual stories of their evolution from matter to consciousness. As the entity approached, the galaxy blazed with coordinated creativity. Every inhabited system contributed to a display that stretched across thousands of light years, telling the story of how countless different forms of life had learned to work together despite their differences. The response came sooner than anyone had dared hope. The entity slowed, then stopped entirely, its massive bulk hanging in space as it processed what it was experiencing. For the first time in recorded history, a drifter actively examined the civilizations around it instead of simply passing through their space. When contact finally came, it wasn't through traditional communication channels. Instead, the entity began creating its own displays, cosmic art on a scale that dwarfed anything the galaxy's inhabitants could manage. Solar systems rearranged themselves into beautiful patterns that somehow didn't disrupt the orbits of inhabited worlds. Nebulae shifted colors in response to the music being broadcast from civilized space. Stars themselves pulsed in rhythms that complemented the collaborative symphony the galaxy had created. "It's responding," whispered, watching in awe as the cosmic consciousness engaged with their creation. "More than that," replied, her enhanced perceptions picking up subtleties in the entity's display. "It's asking questions. It wants to understand how so many different forms of consciousness learn to create beauty together." The exchange lasted for months, with the entity gradually learning about the concepts of cooperation, mutual respect, and collaborative growth. When it finally resumed its journey, it left behind gifts, new star systems arranged in patterns that would naturally foster the development of life, and gravitational sculptures that would serve as monuments to successful cooperation between species. Most importantly, it spread word of what it had discovered to other cosmic entities. The galaxy had demonstrated something that transcended the usual power struggles and territorial disputes, the ability to create beauty through unity. In the aftermath of the Drifter encounter, the galaxy found itself fundamentally changed. Species that had been enemies discovered they could work together when faced with challenges that threatened all of them. The Galactic Council, which had spent centuries managing conflicts between its members, found itself increasingly focused on collaborative projects and mutual aid. Humanity's role in this transformation was acknowledged but not exaggerated. They had provided the catalyst and the initial framework, but the success belonged to all the species that had chosen to participate. Stood once again on the observation deck of a ship, but this time he was watching the construction of the new Galactic Harmony Station, built jointly by every major civilization in the galaxy. It would serve as both a monument to their successful cooperation and a center for addressing future challenges together. "Any regrets?" asked, joining him at the window. thought about the simple life he had left behind, the comfortable obscurity of being a minor cultural. Then he looked at the massive construction project before them, where beings from 1,000 worlds worked side by side to build something greater than any of them could have achieved alone. "None," he said finally. "This is better than anything I could have imagined." Even knowing that this is just the beginning, that there are challenges ahead that will make the Drifter encounter seem simple. Squeezed her hand and smiled, especially knowing that, because now I know that when those challenges come, we won't be facing them alone. The galaxy had learned to work together, and humanity had found its place not as conquerors or rulers, but as the species that had reminded everyone else that their greatest strength lay in unity rather than division. The council that had once mocked a human suitor now looked to humanity as an example of how to bridge differences between species. And the cultural who had simply fallen in love with a princess had become the symbol of a new age of galactic cooperation. As the Harmony's light turned toward their next destination, carrying delegates to another world where cooperation needed to replace conflict, reflected on how love had proved once again to be the most powerful force in the universe. Not the romantic love between him, and though that remained the foundation of everything they had built together, but the broader love of life and consciousness that had motivated an entire galaxy to choose creation over destruction. The future stretched ahead of them, full of challenges and possibilities in equal measure. But whatever came next, they would face it together, united by the understanding that their differences were not obstacles to be overcome, but strengths to be celebrated. And in the cosmic dance of civilizations that spanned the galaxy, humanity had finally found its rhythm.